Corey, for running through that. I think all of that's really useful context for everyone. And we'll probably have a few more people dropping into the Zoom room here over time. I just also wanted to say welcome to Bud Higgins. Bud has also been a longtime member of this community. So welcome, Bud. I'm going to just run through a little bit of intro material before turning it over to Corey. And Corey's going to go through his background, business model, and to make a request of the startup community. And then we'll have a pretty good Q&A session. So let me see if I can get this to go. All right, so the mission at 1 Million Cups is to lower the barriers to access. And so we're really about helping create opportunity for anyone who wants to pursue business ownership. And 1 Million Cups is a national program of the Ewan Marion Kaufman Foundation, which is headquartered out in Kansas City. We've been doing 1 Million Cups here now, I guess since 2014, actually in Richmond, in the Richmond market. So we've been doing it for quite a while now. There's about 150 communities nationally for 1 Million Cups. And it's estimated that we reach about 12,000 entrepreneurs each month around the country. And so one of the things that we love about our particular culture is that we're intentionally very inclusive, and we're looking to work with, honestly, anyone who's in that point of starting up a new business. So we're really welcoming to anyone in the startup community, regardless of their background or their industry sector. And then it's all about building connections and community. It's not about pitches for sales or for money. It's really about learning and entrepreneurs helping each other. So this is just, you can see here a little bit of the footprint for, I hope that came across, the footprint across the Southeast United States. So, and there's a lot more communities in other parts of the country. So these are the members of our organizing team. So myself and Ian are both here today. Ken Smither, John Marin, Michael Time, and Liz Romero are also organizers and help in various ways. This particular week, I'll call out Liz Romero, who helps us in terms of translating our newsletter over to Spanish so that the material we're putting out can reach more people for whom English may be a second language. So very grateful to her, and actually everyone on the organizing team does great work. It's also a good time to mention our community sponsors. So VCU has long time been a sponsor of ours in terms of providing some physical space for us to meet in. Michael Time is associated with the Honor Loan Program that's about entrepreneurship and helping people pursue their goals of entrepreneurship. The same could be said of Open Trellis. So I represent that organization and some of the things that we're doing in terms of connections and capital and educational services for new entrepreneurs. And then the last one I'll mention there is Laborum Edge. So John Marin is with Laborum Edge, which is a digital marketing agency that helps a lot of small business owners get their message out to their audience. So this is, as I said before, it's not a pitch, it's more about learning, understanding, and people assisting each other. So if you know anyone who's in their first 5 years of business and they're looking to engage in the startup community, feel free to point them in our direction. If they'd like to present and get some feedback, that's awesome. We're always looking for presenters. I think now we're scheduling people for August. So if you know anyone who would like to present and get some assistance, we'd be happy to talk with them. Or if they just want to dial in, that's great too. And we're always welcoming new people. So there's plenty of ways to connect with us online. If you want to check it out, that's fine. If you want a copy of these slides, that's cool. Ian will put his email address in the window so you can see that. And at this point, I'm just going to mention, if you have a question, just feel free to type it into the chat window. And then when Corey's done, we'll go through those questions or comments. And we're going to open it up. About half of the time today will be spent just in that discussion, kind of working through the business model, posing questions to Corey, giving him some comments and feedback, and hopefully it'll be valuable for everyone. So with that, I'll stop my screen share, and Corey, we're going to kick it over to you.
All right, excellent. I just want to stop and say, Kevin, I thought I recognized your voice. Now I see your face, and what's up, man? It's been a minute. It's funny that you're not a morning person now, because I wasn't a morning person. Now suddenly I am.
Yeah, man. I'll be getting back to being up in the morning time, man. You know, a few more months.
A few more months.
Yeah.
For the transition. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
part of it, as I was like saying earlier before we started, was like, now that school's off my back, I feel more like a morning person because I'm more excited to get up and do certain things. Like I love school, but now it's like I can do the parts of education that I love the most and focus on that.
Yeah.
In my
that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. All right, let me share my screen here. All right. So you guys able to see that okay?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. So I have like my two screens set up. So if I'm looking away, I'm looking at the presentation. All right, so I'm Corey Hancock. I go by as the chess counselor, and the business I run is Chess Counselor LLC, helping students one move at a time. As you can see by my background, kind of the theme today is going to be about chess. A lot of it's dealing with trying to figure out how to bring my in-person chess services business virtual. As like you can imagine, it was kind of, the interest kind of started with the pandemic. I mean, we faced a lot of challenge with it, and a lot of us had to pivot to figure out how to navigate the virtual world. And for me, I was teaching a lot of chess in person, and then suddenly we couldn't like be around each other. You know, we're all in quarantine, so I had to figure something out. Honestly, I had actually stopped my business for a while. I focused on graduate school. I chose that's my priority. A lot of stress on me. I couldn't do both. And then as I kind of came towards the end of my graduate program, I started looking into more options of how I can get back in the business. So this is the only thing I'm going to read at you just to give you a kind of overview of what I'm about. So Chess Counselor LLC, we're an independent chess instruction organization that offers individual and group lessons. We're proud to offer high quality instruction by trained professionals. We offer virtual and in-person services with a focus on developing critical thinking skills, improving memory, and learning coping skills. Our students know how to navigate the challenges of academia and life while becoming great chess players. And what that means altogether is really just learning the game of chess. It's very chess driven. And then during the challenges you face and learning something difficult, you learn these skills that you can apply to life. So for example, if you're stressed about playing chess, I would encourage you to explore what that stress is about. Is it about study skills? Do you feel like you're not smart enough? Do you have these negative messages coming through you? That's where kind of the counseling piece comes in, but it's still geared towards learning chess and chess development. And again, you relate that to other things in your life that you might care about more. Some people come to me and they want to just become great chess players. But my way of doing things is not just the critical thinking part, but it's also the kind of social emotional learning part as well. So to kind of give an overview about me, like why am I qualified to do this? I had started out at Reynolds Community College, getting my associates in social science. I knew I had an interest in people. Social science is very broad, associate's degree. You can pretty much do a lot of things with it as long as it's like within the helping profession. And I had started a chess club back then, which I'll talk to you a little bit more later. It was kind of my first introduction into potentially having a business with chess. At the time, I had not thought about it. I didn't think you could really make money doing chess. I just knew that I had moved to Virginia, originally from Maryland, and there was no chess community that I could be a part of, so I started one. Then I moved on to get my bachelor's in psychology, where I was narrowing down my focus. Okay, I like to learn about how people think. I like to learn about behaviors. Still not sure exactly how chess and that goes together, but I know it's related somehow. When I was teaching classes to other people, I recognized that behaviors were changing. I knew that was a good thing, but I didn't really know how to articulate that. Fast forward to going to graduate school for counselor education. That's where I'm really fine tuning again what I really want to do. Recognize that I like working in education. I like working with students K through 12, and I like the idea of being a counselor, right? And that when I'm entering graduate school, I still didn't really know what being a counselor really meant, but I liked what was happening with counselors. I liked the way they spoke. I liked the kind of change that implemented into society, and I wanted to be a part of that. So again, jumping back to when I was getting my associates, I had started Henrico Chess Club. This is my girlfriend, Javon. She also helped me start the chess club. Very extroverted person. I'm a very introverted person. It's very interesting how we kind of mesh together. And we had just gotten together. We found places like, I think this is a mall in Henrico. I forget the name. But we had people just kind of coming out, playing publicly. You see, we have kids here, we have adults here. Here, I'm doing like a simultaneous exhibition where I play everybody at the same time, just giving them a chance to get exposure to playing chess. And it was just kind of a fun thing to do. And then later, when somebody told me, hey, you know, you could charge for this, right? I'm like, what? I'm just playing, I'm just having fun. And then I started learning more about business. So it's kind of around the time where I met Dale. And I went to, I forget what it was, a Kiva meeting where we were learning about like getting no interest loans for small businesses. And that was my first exposure to the RVA Works program and learning about small business and figuring out how I can sell my niche, because it's a very niche thing, as a service that's also educational, and find value in it to parents, to students, and education facilities. So here's an example of me working with Richmond PAL, which is a nonprofit. PAL stands for Police Athletic League. It's a nonprofit that works with at-risk students and gives them a lot of opportunities, a lot of exposure to a lot of educational things. You might learn swimming, you might learn how to golf, you might learn music, you learn chess, and they get grant funding to pay for these services. So we had established a partnership with them. And during this contract, we were working with 120 of their students 3 days a week. And just to kind of show that I had some credibility behind me, like this Chess Counselor LLC is a fairly new venture, but I've been doing chess for about 6-7 years as far as it's been a business. And Chess Counselor LLC kind of emerged in making it more additive to my counselor experiences. So I've been on VCU Spotlight, which spotlights graduates and undergraduate students, and if they're doing special things for the community. They saw that I was working with Richmond PAL, and they decided to highlight that and write an article. We had been on CBS 6, NBC 12, Virginia Current, and also Richmond Magazine, which you might have seen Dale post about for this. So some of the ingredients that kind of come into play here is chess, obviously, but also the counseling component, which I mentioned earlier, where this is very chess driven. Again, like the focus is chess development, but it's also personal development. Again, facing like challenges, like you guys know, if you've heard like Queen's Gambit and you see them talking about like learning how to think and like visualize different moves and that kind of thing. Well, those skills are applied to pretty much anything that you want to accomplish. And also that discipline that comes behind it, because learning chess takes a lot of practice. It's much like a sport where if you want to take it seriously, you are making a schedule for yourself, you're learning tactics, you're practicing puzzles, you're playing against stronger players, you're getting mentors and coaches, and that's how you progress, right? You put in that work, you put in that time, in addition to learning how to think, right? Learning how to think is a big part of this. I've learned about a lot of chess players that don't develop in chess, and they struggle with things that they want to accomplish in life because they haven't taken the time to learn how to think that's applicable to what they're trying to work on, their craft, right? And there's a whole systemic process on how you do that. It's very difficult. There's select few that kind of come into chess or come into different sports or activities or things, and they do really well really quickly without learning the process, right? They kind of figure it out on their own. But for most of us, we need to understand the process, especially for adults. Kids soak things up like a sponge. They'll understand things like that. For adults especially, you have to take a different process. You have to understand how you think. You have to think of yourself. You have to recognize that you're an adult, you have other responsibilities, and how can you still progress while balancing everything out? And this also is tied in with your emotions, your personal lives, your values, your priorities, and that should be explored. And then of course we go into education, where a lot of my partnerships are with nonprofits, with schools, and it's part of the school system. So a lot of my work involves, doing the after school program thing, but matching that to the goals of the school I'm working with. So for example, if I'm working with a school and they're trying to get their grades up with students, well, it's very valuable to them for their students to learn how to think critically, how to study and all those things. So my focus within that school will be about study skills. I'll teach chess and I'll teach them how to study chess, and I'll teach them how to study chess, how to use skills within studying chess to studying math or English or what have you. And then to me, one of the most important ingredients is community. This was the biggest impact for me as a growing up chess player, was that I didn't really care about being good at chess at the time. I was sad when I lost. I didn't like losing, still don't like losing. But what was more valuable to me was being part of a community that supported me and nurtured my growth, right? So when I joined a chess club, I was losing all the time because I didn't know what I was doing, but I didn't mind that. I had people that were wanting to teach me. They were actively seeking to teach me and offer something to me. I had a coach that was patient with me. I had other people want to take me to tournaments so I can be exposed to new experiences. That sense of community is what I value, and that's what helped me get through it, like my shortcomings within education before, because I had a community to fall back on. I had a group of people to support. And of course, that's not just chess, but that's really important, I believe, for any program that you consider, actively consider how you're building a community that's nurturing and supportive. And then some facts about like kind of value proposition type thing. There's tons of them, but my main focus is within education. So we think about how we're bringing up grades. We're thinking about increasing attendance. We're thinking about motivating students to be involved in their classes. Everybody's who's been in school, I mean, everybody's been in school, has struggled with something, right? And a lot of us have struggled with motivation. A lot of us have struggled with our grades in different subjects. My goal is to make it so that you're actively interested in learning, and you have to be very intentional about that. A lot of times, like we might struggle, we might blame our teachers, might blame our parents, might blame somebody. But if we're just sitting there and blame, we're just going to be just continuous cycle of struggle. And by learning how to think, you learn how to push past that. You learn how to be more intentional. You learn how to enjoy things by creating your own study regimen, your own way of thinking. You don't rely just on how somebody teaches you something. You go out of your way to learn something, just like people who like learn from a teacher and then they go YouTube it. That takes some thinking. That takes some critical thinking, and you have to find the right YouTube video, find the right people that can educate you, right? Instead of just letting life happen to you. Oh, I clicked my PowerPoint. Hold on one second.
Oops.
Oh, let's see here. Is this still part of my PowerPoint? No. I lost it. It's gone.
Yeah, don't worry, Corey. It's all going well. I'm already taking notes.
I love it when people take notes. I love it.
Yeah, I hope that's a good thing.
Right. So yeah, like the reason why I clicked away was because this is my virtual chess counselor office, and I had clicked something on here. There's a bunch of hyperlinks on here, right? And the purpose of that was especially during the pandemic, where when I was working in schools for, you know, elementary, middle, and high, and I couldn't actually see the students in person, I still wanted to have a classroom where students could come in and get access to resources and also request time with me, right? Whether to work individually or in groups. So on here, like we have different resources that are related to like, you know, staying healthy during the pandemic. There's a fidget spinner. Well, actually, I really want to click it. Where you could just like play with it. And it's a very mindless thing, but sometimes you just need some kind of quirky chest reliever. I mean, not chest reliever. That's an interesting thing though, chest reliever, stress reliever to do. Because, you know, there's tons of things going on during school and you just need something to kind of help you relax. There's music on here. I think I probably currently have like a Disney playlist on here, but I think it's like classical, like it's just like all done in piano. And I find music very relaxing. I have some things here that students requested, and sometimes I change it around. I think this one is like, yeah, I think this is just, you know, watching an aquarium, like a live aquarium stream, if you've ever seen one of those. Very relaxing. And then on the laptop, you can click and it goes to a Google form. You know, you put your information in, you put why you want to see me, let me know if that's urgent or not, and then we schedule an appointment from there. And yes, I'm wearing sunglasses inside. All right, let me represent since I'm not afraid of hyperlinks anymore. All right, so again, kind of going back to, I had to pivot, right? I started with in-person classes. I was bringing in, you know, the giant chessboard, striking interest with the students, you know, showing them how to move the pieces if they were new to chess, you know, answering questions, you know, doing one-on-one sessions. And no, a lot of it, I really enjoy the group things, but also when you're working in person with one person individually, it's very much like a counseling session where you kind of get them and put them in a safe, nurturing place where they can really express themselves, where you can really focus on their individual needs. I just feel like there's something more to just kind of say to that, whereas like it's great to work in groups, like collectively bring a community, but also being mindful of how you can spend time with somebody one-on-one and how that dynamic is different than working in a group. So me as an individual, as a counselor, I have a counselor, right? I have somebody I talk to one-on-one. As an individual, I have mentors for business. As an individual, I'm part of groups, and I'm part of like the RVA Works alumni. I'm part of my counseling cohort. All this has value, and I'm very mindful and intentional about how I do that. And I'm mindful and intentional about sharing those benefits with others and reminding them to be a part of communities. And I emphasize that, especially in response to the pandemic, where if you were struggling, a lot of it might have had to deal with being on your own, being in isolation, not knowing who to turn to, not having people to turn to. And if we ever go into a pandemic again, which I never want that to happen, I want people to be prepared for it, right? And that's very key. I want them to be ahead of it. Where a lot of the work I was doing in practicum and internship, working with students, was picking up the pieces. In the future, I want them to be able to know already how to pick up the pieces, how to pivot. I want them to know coping skills. I want them to be able to handle it to the best of their ability, and then also work with other people just the same, so that it's not as detrimental as it has been. Still challenging to deal with, but we're more prepared. I'm very big on preparation. So then I've made this adjustment to working virtually, which I found very interesting because I wasn't too familiar. I played chess online before. I didn't think very much of it. I'm more of an in-person kind of guy. But I found that you can share your screen, you can do Google Meets, you can do Zooms, and you can add the chessboard. You can add a collaboration board where if I move the pieces, they see it on their screen. They can move the pieces as if we're sitting together, right? And they can also type notes. We have chess notation where we can actually go through the moves, and then a week from now, we can still go through the same moves if we want to evaluate it. There's tons of opportunities here. And you see like the arrows help kind of display what the pieces are doing. Now here, like I have some buddies here that I met with. I did a session with them so I could take pictures so you guys can see what it looks like. But typically, especially working with students, you have to get special permission to put the pictures out there, so I don't have those. And typically, I like it to be more of a private session unless we're doing chess clubs. All right, so that's pretty much my overview. I have some discussion questions here, but I'm pretty much open to anything you guys want to talk about related to this. So I know some things I face, some of the challenges I've always faced is challenges of focusing on a niche business where, the difficulty of having to explain what it is and then trying to find a market for it where there's not a lot of other people doing exactly what you're doing, but there's people doing things similar. I know one of my weaknesses is building a Rolodex. I've networked with a ton of people, but I can't say I've kept up with everybody consistently. I need to do better with nurturing those relationships and being more like creating like a database for that. And then I'm curious about you guys, what you're working on. I want to know about unexpected challenges that you faced in startups and kind of how you handled them. And then any book recommendations. I'm a pretty avid reader. I find a lot of value in it, and especially it helps me feel like I'm being more productive throughout the week, especially if I'm reading at night. Then I get all these ideas of what I can do during the day or for the week or for the month. It's just very helpful to me.
Awesome. Thank you, Corey. That's great. Could you, I think it's actually helpful for everyone if you leave those bullet points up on the screen share, and then that'll be a nice reminder for us. So, so I was gonna just comment to everyone, feel free to put in comments, questions, responses to any of these points in the chat window, and I'll make sure to get through the list to get people. So we can hear more than Corey's voice and Dale's voice. We want to hear from everyone. So I'm just going to start off with a very kind of basic question, Corey. So, I'm understanding that there's a problem out there in the world and it sounds like K through 12 education, where critical thinking, memory, and coping skills, the development of those areas and young people's psychology is not what it could be, and you're part of the answer to that problem. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So a lot of it's thinking about let's focus on coping skills, for example. Coping skills, it doesn't have to be a complex thing. A coping skill can be just something you enjoy doing that helps you relax and helps you unwind and get prepared for the next challenge you have to meet. So for me, chess is one of my coping skills. I know for many, it seems like a stressful thing and it might not be your coping skill, but me playing chess helps me just to focus on something else. And for me, that's kind of like a distraction, but a healthy distraction because I have a plan for, returning back to what I need to focus on, right? And I use that methodically. I think about when I'm going to play chess, right? I spend about an hour a day doing tactics puzzles or playing games. and then I return to what I need to do. And if I don't do that, and if I stay just focusing on like challenges and like stressful situations and like dwelling on the world and ruminating, then that builds up, and I get more likely to run into burnout, right? So by educating students, especially young people that are not familiar with coping skills, you kind of prepare them to face these bigger challenges that they may not have faced yet, or you help them deal with challenges that they are currently facing, right? I work with a lot of at-risk students. If you were like in poverty during the pandemic, it exacerbated the challenges you were already facing, right? So it's really important that I taught coping skills, and it was really important that they applied them consistently, right? And that's where part of the value brings. When they're able to exercise their coping skills, not only does their education life improve, but their personal lives improve, right? You might find out that you're waking up earlier, like I have been. You might find that your relationships are improving with like your roommates or your sisters and your brothers and your parents, because you're more relaxed. You're not as like high strung.
So let me jump in then and ask you this one, Corey. So as you think through that problem set, right? So critical thinking, memory, coping skills, we could say, for example, that sports, extracurricular activities are a great, physical outlet for people. It's good for team building, dealing with pressure situations. I was at a friend's swim meet yesterday. My friend's daughter was in the swim meet, so you could see the pressure of the race. And as an 11-year-old is getting used to, oh, this is what pressure feels like to, perform at a particular point in time. Mm-hmm. And so there's lots of ways that people could develop these skills, but chess is providing a unique combination. Or as you're communicating this, are there any third-party data points or research that you can point to show how chess is particularly good at that combination of skills?
So my first thought is like, are you speaking to like actual research? Because that's a lot of what I've been doing in graduate school, is pulling research specifically about after-school programs and how it's benefited students' lives. There's tons of research on that, and it's very focused on critical thinking skills, and it's starting to expand into research about how it helps them social emotional development as well.
Yeah, I mean, my thought here is that academic research can be helpful, just to have a couple of references. I mean, when we're talking with, people in industry, we don't want to overwhelm them with the academic stuff, but
and that's what my thought was too.
Yeah, but I think a couple of references can be helpful if they're from large, well-recognized institutions, foundations, think tanks. That's cool. I think that lends credibility, because there's sort of this assumption or this assertion that you're making, which is people have these sort of challenges in K-12 education. I think most people would agree with that. You're making the assertion that chess is a part of the solution. So I think just having a couple of points, I don't think we need to overwhelm people with, a paper of secondary research on a topic, but I think, I do think a couple of points are helpful. I know that John Brew has been on a startup team that's also leveraged some academic research, so he might be able to weigh in terms of that topic. But the other thing I wanted to mention, Corey, is that, I think, well, for me, when I go from, okay, let's say that this is a part of the solution, so let's believe that, and we say that's the problem people are having. Now that gets into, so who are the people most likely to have this problem, and what does the revenue look like from that, right? Because that's what we're talking about in terms of thinking through the business model. So can you talk to us a little bit about your revenue streams?
Yeah. So for me, like big picture, what we're working on is also having a website for students to kind of come on and play virtually. And that would be driving revenue for membership, right? And in addition to that, we would be doing classes. So the after school programs, primarily working with nonprofits, and like, let's say like right now my focus is County Public Schools and building community around it. And the revenue would be coming from grant funding from them. And then it would be coming from like PTA groups, and like either the school would be paying for it or the parents be paying for it, or have been paying for it. And then the idea for me right now is like focus on, let's talk about Henrico County Public Schools, where I've been having discussions with like the superintendent. I've been having discussions with the, well, now she's the assistant secretary of education, about having a community built around where we have chess in each school, right? And it's funded by Henrico County, funded by Henrico PAL, funded by the Henrico Education Foundation to keep it sustainable. Because what they're after now, because one of the challenges they've been facing is they've had programs kind of come and go. They haven't been sustainable and they haven't been considered high quality. So by having this community kind of built, the revenue stream kind of comes at like a bi-monthly basis of classes being run, tournaments being held, award ceremonies, pretty much anything that you can think of for like a sport would be run through us.
Awesome. I have plenty more questions, but I'd love to open it up. Does anyone else want to raise their hand or jump in?
Please do.
Dale, I have a question if anyone else doesn't.
Go for it.
All right, so first and foremost, thank you so much for coming out to speak, Corey. You and I have known each other since community college, so you know a little bit about my background. With that being said, have you ever gotten the chance to work with children with disabilities?
Oh yeah. So even before I went to graduate school, I had been working with students with disabilities. Especially, I think a lot of my focus was working with students with intellectual disabilities, and focusing on how to think and how to process things was very important for them, especially also learning to communicate with other students, learning to advocate for themselves. So I would be teaching them chess, but also teaching them about how to do those things as well. For example, it's now becoming more common practice where if you have a student with a disability that needs to learn to advocate for themselves, they work with a counselor or a teacher or somebody to create a presentation, sharing like who they are, kind of like my presentation about who I am and what I'm trying to do, but also sharing their strengths, sharing where they need support, sharing this and like, you know, what kind of resources they need and what resources they've used before and what their goals are. And that this presentation is shared with like entire like school staff. So people are familiar with it and they can assign people to kind of help them meet those goals. And without that presentation, you might have a student that's just kind of in isolation, struggling, like, and not understanding why they're struggling and not really understanding their disability and, you know, of everything else that comes with it.
Thank you, Corey.
I think we're ready for the next question.
I kind of have a question. So one thing I've been working on is I reached out to the SBA, SBDC, and they paired me up with the Crimdale network down here at William and Mary. And what that allowed me to do was they're going to do a case study on my product. And from that case study, they're going to come up with a strategy to push in a local area. I'm not sure if that's something you've reached out to or considered.
So I have a SCORE mentor, and then I have SBDC mentor. And so one of them helps me kind of, because I'm building a business that's also to duplicate myself. So I'm going to be hiring more chess counselors to work in schools, right? One has experience working with like a consultation company. Well, they owned a consultation company and they're helping me build the framework with it. The other business owner is helping me refine my business canvas over and over again, and then expose me to other SCORE mentors that work within marketing and accounting and help me develop that in order to be able to scale, right? So that means I found it incredibly valuable to try to get hold of as many specialists as you can to work with you independently. And then also definitely Dale, stay in touch with Dale to kind of keep networking, keep building and keep moving with more people. Because what I found is like I used to be stuck in this rut where I was like, oh, I'm smart enough, I can do everything by myself. And just because I was able to sustain myself, I kind of viewed that as success. But it was not nearly as fun. I did not feel fulfilled, and I was unmotivated to really expand outside of what I knew, right? So building that community for yourself as far as business concerned, highly valued. Keep doing it, keep reaching out, keep asking them questions, and if you can, try to meet them on a regular basis.
I think one of the things that I meant to highlight there was, have you performed an actual case study with a third party?
Sorry,
Because the case studies, you know, they're going to study you and your environment with your program, and they're going to be able to evaluate, you know, what are the strengths, what are the overall weaknesses, where can you take this, and really evaluate the entire program that you offer with the connection of the counseling, and maybe be able to come up with another strategy based off the case study alone.
So I've been offered that, but not by, I think you said SBA was offering that. Are they offering to do that for free? Because I've been offered it by marketing companies that wanted to charge, but I haven't done it yet.
It was actually through the Crimdale Network in William and Mary. So they're an independent counseling service, but it's students at William and Mary who are going through the master's program, but it is free.
Could you share that with me, like the information for that?
Yeah, definitely.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it's really good.
So Corey, I'm just gonna jump in and thanks Ryan for that. That's super helpful to understand. I mean, anytime that we can get assistance in terms of market research like that is super valuable. And as Corey was saying, there's lots of different agencies that are available for a fee to do different pieces of market research, but I'm a big advocate for engaging students and working with student interns that are actually bringing a lot to the table. So so that's super helpful. Ryan, did we answer your question though?
Yeah, you did. I was just really curious if you had anyone like analyze your business, as far as like just sit there and maybe be an external player, watch how the counseling service is working, and then follow those students over time and see how they've changed, developed, and be able to really understand the value that comes from the service.
I really
mean,
love
you did
that.
answer it, but it sounds fascinating to me to be able to see something like that come.
That is something I'm definitely missing. I definitely would love to explore that. I think I thought about it, and like I know I didn't want to pay for it. Then I thought about doing it myself and recognized how tedious of a task that kind of is to do on your own. So I put it on hold, but that would be excellent. Yeah.
And just to that point, I think the evaluation of your particular program and its outcomes for students is super valuable. I think Ryan raises a great point there. I would encourage you, Corey, as well, to talk with Sambo Chunda. Have you met Sambo at all?
Yeah, I think I did a survey for her.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so she's doing exactly.
I think you muted yourself.
Oops, I think I cut off there for a second. So she's doing for us, as you know, looking at all of the RVA Works alumni and what that means for people who are starting businesses, right? And so she's looking at that kind of in aggregate and doing that real in-depth assessment. And so when you have let me see, how would I say that? A population of program participants that can be evaluated in some way, I think, you know, it's wonderful to have that type of academic research, because it just adds credibility not only to your original assertion that we were talking about just generally, but then it's even one level stronger because it's an assessment of your particular program, and that's even stronger. So I think that's a great recommendation. I was just going to bring us back to the revenue streams and talk a little bit about website, memberships, classes, and it sounds like there's some grant-funded programs. So just a couple of thoughts that come to mind on that. One is that there are ways to build up audience and to essentially establish traction for website memberships, attending classes, coming into that online space. I love that because it's not only Corey's hours billed out for other people. It's more, there's a product offering that can scale, right? So love that. On the other side, and by the way, I think that the marketing piece there is around for that website traction. I think on the other side, we have things which are much more about responding to responding in a proactive way to the grant giving organizations. I think that would be my priority on the Rolodex, is identifying that short list of resources that you really want to make sure are aware of what you're doing. Any thoughts on that stuff?
So this reminds me of a conversation we had where you had me write out my top 10 like people I want to talk to, like this big decision makers. And I do need to revisit that again. But when I had done that, that was incredibly helpful. That was part of why I reached back to contacts with relationships I had before. And that's kind of why I started speaking with the assistant to the Secretary of Education in Virginia, and like starting having those conversations and also looking for their pain points of like what they're struggling with and what they want to see happening in schools, and then getting their support became incredibly valuable. And it's like, I need to do that also kind of like, not just at like the government level, but also down to like the business level with the nonprofits, executive directors and such. So I've been reaching out to like school board members and of course, Secretary of Education, but I also need to be working with more of the nonprofits that are receiving that grant funding.
Yeah, that's that's a great point. And one of the things that comes to mind, there's a lot of people, and I've worked with so many entrepreneurs that have struggled with this particular area, which is something like seeking the perfect pitch, right? So they want, before they have those conversations, they want to have everything as perfect as it possibly could be. Can you talk a little bit about pushing past that internal resistance so that you initiate the conversation just authentically and say, hey, you know, this is where we are, this is what we're doing, we'd love to work with you?
So make sure I'm understanding. So you mean like before I have everything together, what's allowing me to still reach out to people?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let me just kind of say, I think a lot of people internally, right, within themselves, they're pursuing their passion. They love what they're doing. They know they have an idea of what they're doing. They know that there's also certain things that are not perfect yet, and they know that. And so as they're thinking through that, there's a little bit of internal resistance to contact the key stakeholders because they don't want to come to the table with something that's imperfect. Okay. So can you talk a little bit about pushing past that kind of internal reticence so that you start the conversations?
Yeah, so I think that was definitely like the process, because 2 years ago, I did not feel confident enough to just, even if I was well prepared to have these conversations. But I think part of it internally, I felt like I didn't know the language. And one of the things that helped me learn the language specifically for this environment was with graduate school, where I have a very in-depth understanding of what they're looking for and the key words, the buzzwords that they're looking for. So when I'm having these conversations, a lot of them are taking notes. It's not about chess. It's about like specifically like, is this evidence-based? Is there research behind it? Is there like evidence that this has, you know, been successful before, that kind of thing. And even though haven't done those things myself, but they can see and they already know like what works and what they're looking for. I also feel very confident at being like having the credibility that's valued in this industry, which is having that master's in education, where I'm not really, my thinking is not much different than before I got it, but having that title has been very helpful. And it kind of, you know, it's not, you know, you don't need a master's in education to do this, but it helps. It helps me have those conversations because I have lived the experiences that they are currently living in many different ways. A lot of people I'm connecting with are through school counselors who I share, you know, a lot of things with, and they connect me with people that I had these conversations with, right? And there's already a lot of value to what school counselors do. It's kind of difficult to kind of figure out like general advice to that, because I've been working within this industry for like my whole adult life. And kind of what builds that confidence is just being around those people, knowing their experiences and feeling like we're like more, even though we're not friends, but we have similar experiences and we're part of a similar community. And I speak to them as such. Like I am not a salesman. Like I'm working on that. I'm trying to figure out how to, create a pitch and like, close deals and stuff. But I'm really just talking to people like as people. Like I'm never really trying to plan anything. I just kind of dive in and I always learn something from it. So I guess one of the points to take away from it is like, just do it. Like Nike, just do it. And then you learn so much from it. Like when I go out and talk to people and if it might not go so well, at least I learned something from that, right? And I can take that away. I can jot down what I did wrong. I can talk to one of my mentors about it, refine it and come back. Versus if you were just doing things like in your head and you're planning, you're really making a lot of assumptions about what could be and how things should work. But until you get it from the person that you're trying to get a relationship with, you have no idea. You're just kind of guessing. So me, it's just kind of jumping into it. Like before, I was a very active planner, but really that was just avoiding uncomfortable experiences. Like even like with presenting, I still have doubts about myself as a presenter, but I'd still rather do it, show up for it, experience it, build these relationships. And if it doesn't go great, that's fine. I still had the experience.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I think the operative word in there is confidence. And so just so you know, when you present, you come across as someone who, and rightfully come across as someone who understands what they're presenting. So, so I wouldn't worry about that at all. So I saw that I saw that Logan had a question. Logan, did you want to go ahead with your question?
Yes. So in your presentation, I saw a bunch of photos, including whole range of different age groups, but you're mostly talking about school and school age children. Who's your target consumer for your business?
Yeah, so primarily we look for grades 4 through 8. And right now, as far as for a business model for profit, I'm looking at like places like Henrico because they have the funding, right? And there's places like Henrico Education Foundation that support programs within the school system. And that target demographic is typically with white American, Asian American, people that want to build that cultural capital to help them get their students into colleges, to get scholarships and what have you. And at the same time, I'm also targeting at-risk youth and working with nonprofits in that end that get the funding in that area.
All right, awesome. So, so with that target audience in mind, Corey, what are your thoughts in terms of messaging? Because you raised a really interesting point about the challenge of a niche business where we have to be able to communicate very clearly when someone says, "Who are you?" Right? So chess counselor, not Corey, right? But chess counselor LLC, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? What do you want? What do you want to tell people about it? And where do you want to say that? How do you want to say it? Those are some really critical questions. The other marketing question is, how do you know if they're hearing it? Right.
Yeah.
And what do those metrics look like? So that's that's the core of marketing strategy. So so as you think about the sort of audience, are you thinking that you're marketing more to parents or to students, young adults themselves?
So first, for the first part, honestly, I probably explain what I do differently every time I talk to somebody. Like it depends on how I'm feeling and like what I'm excited about, and I'll talk about that. But I haven't been so strategic about like what messaging I'm trying to put out there and how they're perceiving it. I haven't done that. I've done some marketing research, and most of it with conversations with school administrators and with parents. That's usually who I'm marketing to, who are looking for educational programs. So these are people, especially if I'm targeting like individuals, I'm looking for families that already value educational services to support their students' development. And they're already putting money into it, right? So I'm not really convincing them that educational service is valued. I'm more so sharing them like, you should choose me over this other educational service. That's more of the conversation. And a lot of it, like there's a lot of students that are already playing chess and they're looking for like not just improved chess improvement, but also things that will help them like do a creative resume builder, right? What kind of activities can they participate in that'll make them look better for schools and jobs? So for as far as like the messaging, it's been very targeted to like the individual. I honestly probably have done too much to like research each person and trying to like cater to their individual needs, which is important. But as far as scaling is concerned, I haven't come up with this like overview message for like specific groups.
Yeah, it's I suppose for me it's an interesting one because we're going through this ourselves with the launch of Open Trellis and thinking through those key phrases that it just locks into someone's mind. So instead of a 20-minute conversation so that they understand, it's more upfront. What are we saying on social media? What are we saying on a YouTube clip? What are we saying on the website? And I think those key phrases, those key communication messages help explain pretty quickly. I'll tell you just a little tidbit that an experience I've had on this. So several years ago, I was doing some part-time evening weekend driving for Uber. And I had these kind of epiphany moments when someone would be sitting there, I'm driving them wherever they're going, and they'd say, we'd be in this conversation and then they'd say something like, it seems like you do more than just drive Uber. What's your day job, so to speak, right? And I would say, oh, well, I lead a nonprofit. We help people start businesses. It was just like that simple so that people understood, oh, okay. And then after that, I can talk about lots of different things depending on what they're asking. And that's more conversational. But I think the communication messages that get broadcast out are the things which ultimately will go from, here's a message that Chess Counselor LLC is broadcasting. And then hopefully that's resonating so that followers on social media or people who pick up something become a subscriber of the email campaigns. And then from that, hopefully that's converting over from a visitor to a member of the chess community, right? I think that's how I would visualize that funnel from awareness to engagement to customer.
I appreciate that. That's excellent.
Sure. Other questions, comments? Okay, I'm just going to make one comment here, Corey, in relation to your second bullet point, because I think we've covered a lot on the first one. By the way, I love the book recommendations coming in. So thank you to Logan and Amani for that. If other people have book recommendations, go ahead, type them in. One of the things that comes to mind for me in terms of building Rolodex is that the people that are on my short list of the folks that I want to know about me and about our organization, those people I have on a particular distribution list so that from time to time, I can give them some updates which are not broadcast to the world.
Yeah.
And it's a little tactic that I've developed that I think has proven effective, which is they're not advisory board members. They're not kind of really on the team, so to speak, but we'd love if they were even stronger supporters. And so just to give you an idea, we have about 15 people on our core team that are doing different projects and actively working in different ways to support the Open Trellis launch and other things that we're doing. And so that's all good. And then there's I think there's now about 7,000 people that we contact through our email campaign. There's, I think, about 1,700 people in our meetup group and other followers on LinkedIn and so forth, Twitter. And so there's probably about 10,000 people out there that get different messages from us. But there's a middle ground between the 15 and 10,000 people. And to me, that middle ground is the group of people that I want to make sure understand at a little bit closer level. Here's what's going on, and the information that I think they will see as valuable about what we're doing, because for them, I know that they're interested in entrepreneurship. I know that they're interested in investments. I know that they're interested in what we're doing. And I'm giving them some insight that they might not otherwise get. And so I think that that's a nice way to open up a conversation. And as I'm sending that by email, at the bottom, I'm saying, if you have any questions about any of this information, feel free to hit me back and I'd be happy to talk with you about it. And it's just a kind of reminder for them, and it's just continually opening the door for conversation.
I know what I'm going to be doing this weekend. Be creating this. I've been meaning to do it too. I just haven't sat down and kind of figured that out.
Right. I mean, you know, for us with what we do, the way that I structure that is in the email, and I'll have, you know, that group. I think there's about maybe 70 or 80 people on that list. And these are just people who are in a position that could really help advance what we're doing. And so in that, I'm pretty much structuring that email around what's happening in the economy, what's happening in the investment markets, what's changing around the world of entrepreneurship. And then the last part is, you know, what's happening around RVA Works and the Open Trellis launch, so that they are getting some good insight up front that may be applicable for their business and or their agency. And at the same time, it's a great way for me to lay out the context so that they see, oh, that's what Dale's working on right now. And if they want to have a conversation about it, I'm opening the door for that. And a lot of times, you know, when those conversations happen, they're opening up conversations to other people that I would never have connected with. So I think that's a great way to build up the Rolodex.
Awesome. Yeah, it's
Any
more
other-
than I could have hoped for. So I
Any
apologize.
other-
I haven't been looking in the chat, and now I'm seeing all the messages. I apologize.
Can you, do you mind stopping your screen share? I have a couple of startup community events we need to run through. Thank you. All right. All right. So Corey, thank you again for all of that conversation. I hope that was fun for me, and I hope a lot of other people got some benefit from it. I'm sure they did. We got into it pretty well. So I just wanted to give a couple of sort of public service announcements here for starting the events happening around our patch. You would like information or these slides. I know Ian already put his email address into the chat window, and he's happy to respond to you with these slides. This workshop is happening with the Honor Loan Program Introduction to Entrepreneurship, and specifically talking about how to think through, you know, people who are in recovery and what they're the challenges that they're going through in terms of starting up a business. So that's also with the McShin Foundation. That's happening this evening. The Network Incubator. I'm a big fan of Ayanna McMullen. If you haven't met her and you happen to be around Richmond, I encourage that. So a couple of events here. The Mingle Happy Hour is coming up tomorrow. Then next week, the monthly incubator meeting will be happening. SCORE Richmond has a couple of workshops happening. John Brew gave SCORE a shout out. The Richmond SCORE is great. I know that there's a lot of SCORE chapters around the country that are also really strong. And actually, my brother is getting involved with SCORE up in New Jersey. So, so a couple of workshops here happening. One, financial basics. The other on value proposition. Startup Virginia and Venture South are going to be doing a workshop on taxes for startups. That's happening on Friday at 10 o'clock. And I think the last one here is the ribbon cutting for the MBL City Point Innovation Center. That's going to be coming up on Friday of, Friday, July 9th. So coming up in a couple of weeks, that's with the Metro Business League. And that's it. So I just wanted to say thanks to Corey one more time. Corey, awesome job. And I think we're going to leave it there. Thanks so much. And I'm sure, Corey, you'll probably hang around for a little bit in case people have questions for you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, have a good one.
Thank you.